Hello and welcome back to One Trek Mind with me, Raptor.
And me, Michael.
And today we thought we would tackle a burning question, and one hopefully that's going to create a shorter video than normal, although somehow I doubt it, but we'll see. And that is the question of what is the ugliest Federation or Starfleet ship in Star Trek? Just for a couple of rules, we've kept it to ships that have appeared in the shows or the movies, so obviously any sort of ugly fan-made or game designs looking at you, Star Trek Online, will not be included here. We're just concerned with ones that have appeared in the show in some context, whether they were a background ship or a main vessel, that sort of thing. And we've picked
canon.
We've picked one ship each, and then we've got a dishonorable mention at the end. So, Michael, did you want to go first?
What I think is the ugliest starship in Starfleet, and I'm basing this mostly off of just my personal preference, because there are probably arguably uglier ships, but I just absolutely cannot stand this one. It is the Universe class, the Enterprise J. I cannot stand this ship. I think it is disgusting. Those pencily nacelles are just awful. They look like they're going to snap. The saucer is way, way too big. Like, abhorrently big. There's not enough angles or anything to it. Everything is super smooth. Like, everything is a curve, which there are some ships that can make that work. My favorite of them all, the Intrepid class, is a rather smooth and not angular ship, but it has some style to it. The Universe class does not. The hole that attaches to the nacelles, it like wraps around the saucer from top to bottom, and it makes the saucer look like it can sort of just be slotted in there, like swapped in and out, which maybe that is a feature for it. I think it looks stupid. I can't stand it. I really don't like it. I also think the windows and lights are far too extensive on it, just kind of for the sake of let's make it look futuristic. And I mean, my ultimate opinion on the whole thing is it's just too damn big. Like, there is no reason it should be that large. And it makes me seriously question how any singular captain could possibly manage their crew on a ship that big. Like, do you have multiple captains for a Universe class? I feel like you would have to, because the crew for that would have to be in like the tens of thousands. It is so utterly massive. But yeah, overall, I just think it's a very bad looking ship. Definitely my least favorite Enterprise. It's simultaneously too big and too small in all the wrong places. Like, how do you have a saucer section that wide with nacelles that thin? It looks so bad. I can't stand it.
Your comment about it needing multiple captains reminds me of a joke post I once saw about Imperial Superstar destroyers being too big, and the joke post telling a story that apparently the people in like weapons control have started a mini war with the people next door and stuff like that. there's like an entire microcosm society living inside. Yeah, I'm not a particular big fan of the Universe class either. I think my problem is it's just too large. I do also think those warp nacelles are way too spindly. Apparently, I do remember reading somewhere that like some of the background apocrypha for this ship is that it's not actually built, that it's actually also like organic. It's grown essentially.
Oh, so it's gross on top of being ugly. That's
So
just great. This is not oh shoot, what is that show called?
Stargate Atlantis?
No, it's not Farscape. I don't want my ship to be alive. Thank you. Thank you very much. We did that with the Pinecone ship. Don't want to do it again. Don't like it.
It is technically, in terms of the canonicity, it's only a picture on the back of a wall. I mean, are we gonna say that's enough?
Yes, they saw it through a temporal projection. Like, they know that it exists in the future. It's canon.
Well, in that case, I have a very different sort of ship, but one I think is well deserving of the classification of the ugliest Starfleet ship, and that is the Jaeger class.
You can't just take an Intrepid saucer and then just flap it on like a bird of prey looking thing.
So, in real life, the Jaeger class started out as 2 commercially available ship kits, an Intrepid class and a Marquis Raider, which were out because of Voyager, so they had the Intrepid class and the Marquis Raider as the 2 ships that show up at the first episode of Voyager, out as commercially available kits. And as in great Star Trek tradition, needing a background vessel for Deep Space Nine, they kit bashed these 2 kits together, creating a vessel which is the command hull of an Intrepid class on top of what is technically a Condor class Federation scout ship, but is also known as the Marquis Raider.
It's like a chimera of a ship.
And then they stuck the Intrepid class's warp nacelles on the wings of the Raider instead of the phaser cannons that are traditionally there. In universe, the Jaeger is apparently the result of Starfleet's need during the early days of the Dominion War to get whatever ships it could get out, and these were constructed from what bits that happened to be lying about. Now, I have a few issues with that statement, which I'll get into in a second. I think it's just hideous in all sorts of ways. One of the problems is with scale, because obviously the kit-bashed kits, they were in the same scale, but in reality the Marquis Raider is considerably less large than the Intrepid class's command hull. The Marquis Raider has been scaled up in order to fit the Intrepid class saucer section onto it, which means that for some reason Starfleet happened to have an Intrepid class command hull with no engineering hull lying around, and then decided to build an oversized Marquis Raider to stick it onto the top of. I could think of many other designs of Starship whose engineering hull I would rather have stuck onto the bottom of my Intrepid class saucer section. Excelsior hull, for example.
No.
It's a hideous chimera combination. And what's even worse is, I think this is ugly in 2 ways. First, it physically looks hideous. But secondly, why? It's a background ship for Deep Space Nine. Why not just use an Intrepid class? Why not just use an Intrepid class? We know that there were Intrepid classes around during the Dominion. Admiral Ross latterly has an Intrepid class, the Bellerophon, which we then see in an episode of Deep Space Nine being used. Why not just have an Intrepid class ship in the place of the Jaeger? A whole new starship wasn't really necessarily required. And then it kind of is even worse if you think about the fact, so Admiral Ross has been given this Intrepid class starship. Why not have him as why not give him the Jaeger? If you want to reuse certain shots from Voyager where you've got that command hull, why not give him the Jaeger? Why not make the Jaeger his ship? At least it's unique in its ugliness. So yeah, it's a ship
Certainly.
which for me could have been anything else. Could have been just an Intrepid class. Could have been any other type of ship in the background. But no, they kit bash these 2 together for a background ship that only ever shows up in passing exposition shots of Deep Space Nine. We never see it in combat, which is also, I think, a bit of a shame, because this thing is supposed to have the 2 big phaser cannons still of a Marquis Raider, but they're supposed to be still there underneath the command hull. So it almost kind of makes this like an artillery ship. This thing is flying around with 2 super-sized, massively powerful phaser cannons, like a big, almost World War II style artillery gun. And we never see it in combat. We never see it used. It's apparently in the fleet that helps them retake Deep Space Nine. And we never see it used in anger, which for me feels like almost a bit of a disappointment. It's ugly and hideous, but it's almost kind of a disappointment that you create something that it could have had an interesting purpose, but don't ever use it.
I'm just glad we didn't see more of it. Honestly, I'm like, that shit's ugly.
There is one redeeming feature. The physical model of the ship is one of the few kit-bashed starships that has ever gone to auction, and it was expected to get about $4,000 to $6,000, but in the end earned well over $10,000.
For that?
Yes. The Jaeger is
I could
truly
use $10,000 a lot more than the person who made that.
is a
monstrosity.
truly hideous starship. So, dishonorable mention, we're limited to one each. I think mine is going to be very, very controversial, so I shall let you give your dishonorable mention first.
Mine probably isn't that controversial. It's the Daedalus class.
Really? After all the hate you give the Nebula class, you have the dishonorable mention of the little of the Daedalus class, the little
Yes.
bullshit.
It's a ball. It's just a ball. It's a big ball. Its neck looks like a huge weak point to me as well, because it's a very large ball with a spindly little neck that attaches it to the rest of the ship. Like, essentially, it looks like a beach ball attached to a spray can. I can't stand it. I think it looks so ugly. And I realized, it's made for medical purposes, whatever.
Well, you realize it was one of the original Matt Jeffries designs for what was going to be the Enterprise.
And thank God, someone came to their senses and said, absolutely not. Let's not do that. It makes me think of Star Wars more than Star Trek, and I don't like that. It seems so far and away from the other
because
designs.
It's got a ball.
Yes. Because it has the ball, because it has like the very round neck and like main hole to it. It very much looks like a Star Wars ship to me, and it feels so different than the other Starfleet vessels. I don't like it. Like, uniqueness is good, but when you are so far removed from the rest that it's reminding me of another franchise, I'm like, nah, you went too far with that. Which, again, is kind of ironic considering that is the original design that they were going to go for. But as I said, thank the Lord that is not the way we went. I really, really don't like the Daedalus class. I think it's quite ugly. If I was someone who was injured and I needed medical attention and they said, all right, you're going to this ship, I'd be like, let me die. I don't want to be on that thing. Thank you.
I'm actually almost completely. I really love the Daedalus, not the original Daedalus. I have loved some of the modern fan reinterpretations of the Daedalus, especially the NX era Daedalus class, because I think it suits that era very well. Granted, if you the basic like original series Daedalus is kind of hideous in some ways, yes. I am surprised you didn't mention the Nebula, since every time a Nebula class comes on in Next Generation, you grimace and despise it.
They are pretty ugly as well. I don't like a Nebula class. I think they're ugly.
How would you improve the Daedalus without, like, basically turning it into another ship? What sort of relatively small changes would you make to it to improve the way it looks?
I really don't know how. I'd want to remove the ball, first of all, but that kind of completely changes it. If you have to keep that damn beach ball, then make the remainder of the ship a little beefier. The fact that it is so narrow and small for the rest of the ship, it just looks incredibly fragile to me.
I mean, that is what they did with the Pasteur in the last episode of TNG. They kept the ball but made the engineering hull just as big and sort of stuck it more together without a neck.
Yeah, and I think that looks substantially better. Still not my favorite. I'm not a fan of the overall shape of it, but I think that would make it a little better for me.
Mine is very controversial, and I know I'm going to get a whole heap of hate for it. I was initially going to go with the Vengeance from Star Trek Into Darkness, but that to me isn't so much ugly in its design and purpose. It's ugly in the fact that it falls into the scimitar category of J.J. Abrams just wanted big, new, hyper-powerful starship that's going to be black because it looks cool and it's going to be so much bigger, you guys. It's
So
just it's a childish design. It's not something that is supposed to actually be taken seriously, in my opinion. My dishonorable mention is the Galaxy class.
Ooh.
And Okay, now before everyone suddenly floods the comments, hear me out. I've always felt that the Galaxy class has some very ugly proportions. The saucer section is too wide, the engineering hull is too short and not deep enough. The neck is too tall, the nacelles are too short, the pylons are too low. It looks obviously I know this doesn't matter because it's space, but it looks like it's always going to fall over because that huge saucer hull, it's like one of Guinan's hats that's been attached to something way too small.
Maybe that's why it's designed like that. Maybe that's why they designed Guinan's hats that way. They're like, oh, she's just emulating the ship she's on.
The engineering hull, I love the manta ray curvaceousness of it, and then they stick this enormous neck that's very, very tall on, and then they stick a huge dinner plate onto the top. Obviously, I get that they're trying to make it look similar to the original series Enterprise in some way, but I feel that they have failed, because if you look at like the NX-01 and then look at the NX refit and then look at the Constitution class and then the Constitution refit, and then the Excelsior class, and then the Sovereign class Enterprise, you can see a very clear design sort of evolution in there. Like the neck gradually decreases until it's gone in the Sovereign class. The nacelles gradually become longer and closer to the body of the ship to improve its warp capabilities. The saucer goes to something more aerodynamic, again, for want of a better term. It becomes longer rather than taller. But I feel with the Enterprise C and the Enterprise D, it's like Starfleet has gone backwards in its design idea. It's like, oh, we're going to make the neck even more of an obvious weak point, and we're going to make the nacelles really short and stubby, and instead of nice graceful pylons, we're going to have it just two bent 90-degree angles. It's just not very good looking, and I think it could have easily been saved if they had just taken some more design cues from an Excelsior class, like made the neck shorter, turned the saucer hull 90 degrees so that it's lengthways rather than the other way, and made it a little shorter, made the nacelles longer and slightly higher. If it just a bit more compact and make it longer rather than taller, I think would have worked really well, because then you've got a very clear design step towards the Sovereign class, which does that even more. But the Galaxy as it stands now is hideous. Or as at least, if I was to rank all of the Enterprises, I think the Ambassador and Galaxy class would be coming quite close to the bottom of my list. Maybe only the Odyssey class is underneath them. But yeah, I think it is not ugly, but it's also not graceful.
I don't think you stopped anyone from typing their angry comments about this. I would like to go on record saying I do not agree with this man. I also don't love the Galaxy class, but I would not put it lower than the Universe class by any means at all.
Oh no, I think the Universe class is definitely uglier. I certainly think there have been better looking Enterprises, for sure.
I also agree. Like I said, it's not my favorite of the Enterprises, that's for sure. I agree, it's too wide. I don't dislike the tall neck. I actually kind of like how raised up it is. It might make it a bit of a weak point, but honestly, I think it looks quite nice in that regard. And the nacelles have slowly but surely grown on me, but it's mostly the fact that it's like an elongated oval sideways for the saucer that I just don't like that choice. I really feel like if they had just flipped that 90 degrees, that would have pretty much resolved any issues I had with it, or at least a majority of them. Because that's basically what they do when they jump to their next ship. They just flip it the other way. I mean, I guess there's more changes than that, obviously. It's more streamlined, it's smaller. They go back to the much thinner nacelles and everything. But I think the long versus wide look is definitely better aesthetically.
And I mean, pretty much everything that has been kit bashed on or using Galaxy class pieces is kind of equally as ugly. The Challenger class, the single nacelle Freedom class, the Nebulas, which you despise. They're all kind of not very graceful.
Been a few missteps there, yes.
So, let us know down in the comments which of our opinions you do or don't agree with. I know which one you won't agree with. And also let us know down in the comments, what do you think is Starfleet's ugliest starship? We will at some point, I think, do one for sort of alien vessels as well. As I'm thinking doing one looking at just like the Alpha and Beta Quadrant, like main races. So like deciding who's got the ugliest ship out of the Klingons, the Romulans, the Cardassians, which could be an interesting video as well to do. But yeah, let us know down in the comments what you think. Also, don't forget to throw us a subscribe. We're almost at the 100 subscriber mark, so whatever you can do to help us nudge over that first goal of many would be very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
But until next time, folks, it is goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.